Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
This week, the governor and legislative leaders respond to the news of the record-setting $17.6 billion budget surplus, and state budget officials provide context and detail on the state's economy, plus a look at the life of Governor John Pillsbury. Stay tuned for this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. State budget officials have released the latest budget and economic forecast, showing a projected budget surplus of $17.6 billion. The information will inform Governor Walz's budget proposal, due in January, and will set the stage for the coming legislative session as lawmakers create a budget for the next 2 years.
The macro picture is solid. The golden opportunity that we have to make Minnesota an even better and fair and more inclusive and more prosperous state is there, and the opportunity to work together in the legislative bodies to make that happen is there. We believe the things that we can do are investing in education and in our classrooms, making sure that all of the services are there. We have the opportunity to make sure that we're using the federal infrastructure dollars to continue to modernize Minnesota's infrastructure, thinking towards the future, making sure our roads, our bridges, our transit systems are there. And we think that we may continue to strive to make sure Minnesota's tax system remains fair, and we had the opportunity, as we've talked about, and we proposed in 2019 around the Social Security tax repeal for a large number of Minnesotans to make sure that's easier for them.
We were elected to lead, and we will get things done. That means doing the hard work to finding agreement where it exists and producing a bold, balanced budget that will keep our economy strong, help families and workers, and keep Minnesota as a national leader in so many areas.
Minnesotans have given us a tremendous privilege by electing only the second trifecta in the past 40 years in this state. And now this projected budget surplus means we can respond to Minnesotans' needs and deliver results. Far too many Minnesotans are living paycheck to paycheck. We are in the midst of a housing crisis in our state. Schools are laying off teachers and staff. Employers of all sizes are facing hiring challenges and asking for support with childcare, transportation, and workforce needs. Too many workers still have to choose between a paycheck or taking time to care for themselves or their families. Farmers and entire communities are already suffering from the impacts of climate change. The challenges we face are real, but there are real solutions too. It's not too much to ask to have the prosperity in this surplus be shared equitably.
Hearing a $17.6 billion surplus was a little jaw-dropping. That was shocking to hear. We know that Minnesotans are being overtaxed. Money that could be kept within Minnesotan families to help with high grocery prices and with high energy bills, that money needs to go back to Minnesotans. I look forward to the next session, balancing out our revenues so we aren't taking so much from the families. But I can tell you, I believe, my caucus believes, that tax hikes should be completely off the table.
Joining me to talk more about how we got here and what it means is the Commissioner of Minnesota Management and Budget, Jim Schowalter. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
The photo accompanying the budget slides for this forecast is beautiful, as they often are, depicting trees in a variety of states, some green, some vibrantly yellow, orange, and red, and some bare branches just flocked by a recent snow. Basically, a mixed bag, a season in flux. Is this illustrative of this forecast?
It sure is. One thing, if you want to just think of it really beautifully, is like it can be beautiful in Minnesota in winter. Right now we are in a good shape. We are strong economically. We have a spectacular budget position, and we've got a lot of momentum, even with winter coming. The forecast also describes some of those changing seasons, the recession coming, changing issues on the global stage. So it's not all one thing or another, but it still can be pretty amazing.
The last time we spoke, Russia had just invaded Ukraine. The state and the nation were emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic, and the supply chain was in snarls. And yet, the state's coffers have continued to fill. Are you at all surprised by the resilience of Minnesota's economy?
Not so much. Minnesota is an amazing place. There was actually a recent article, I think, in the Washington Post describing Massachusetts and Minnesota as two of the most livable, successful places to be in the nation. And it comes from a number of different features that we have of great workforce, great versatile economy, really good standards of living. All of those things make Minnesota an engine for going forward. In this particular case, some of the balances we're talking about just happened because of COVID, because of corporate earnings, because of things that were going on that are less specific to Minnesota. But looking forward and how our economy is going, now it makes sense to me because we've invested in the right things. We're going to continue to do that so that we're on the edge. We're looking forward rather than looking backwards.
The largest Powerball ticket at $2 billion was sold last month north of Los Angeles. That pales in comparison to the size of Minnesota's projected surplus at nearly $18 billion. It's a huge number. How did we get here? I mean, you've sort of laid it out, but really, how did it get so big?
Well, part of it is we had a drawer full of those Powerball tickets. Going back a couple of years ago, we already knew we had money in the bank or that we were running ahead of forecast, even a couple fiscal years ago. And so for the last couple of sessions, I think we've done a very good job of being ready for whatever's going to happen next because of COVID, because of the economy. It was hard to project. That said, we entered last session with a significant balance, in fact, a historic balance. We left session making some progress on some key issues, but we also left with $7 billion already just knowing that that was probably going to be there in the bank, and we were expecting that to grow by another $5 billion. 7 plus 5 starts us at 12. So even before we showed up at the forecast yesterday, in your office pool, you should say, well, 12 is a reasonable estimate, even if there's no news whatsoever. The changes actually were relatively modest, and they actually are also essentially anticipated. Our monthly revenues have been running substantially ahead of our previous estimates, $2 to $3 billion ahead. And we also knew that the federal government had extended the peacetime emergency, lowering our Medicaid costs. Those are the major pieces of this forecast, resulting in about $5 billion more coming into that carry forward, that Powerball ticket that you're referring to. That's most of the story in this forecast.
Revenue is expected, though, to exceed spending through fiscal year 2027. That's 5 years from now. So with that knowledge, is the state collecting too much in tax dollars? Wouldn't it be better if the input more closely matched the output?
It's a great question, and obviously that's going to be a decision for policymakers because I think we could all both find people who would say reliably no or yes. It's a judgment call as to what's the right balance. A couple things I'll look at. One is the price of government. Minnesota for decades has looked at something called the price of government to say, how does personal income compare with how much county, state, basically state and local governments are spending? It's actually been down a little bit over the last few years, but over time it's been relatively stable. So, for the first point is just like historically, we're actually not at a high point. The second thing I would want to look at is how can we use that money? What are the strategies to help us through this tight patch? Because we do know a recession is likely to be coming. We do know that we have a tight labor market. We do know that we're going to need to reposition ourselves to take advantage of significant federal funding so that we're ready for whatever's ahead. These are opportunities that we'll be talking about a lot this session.
After the February forecast, Governor Walz proposed giving some of the then $9 billion surplus back to taxpayers in rebates, $500 for individuals, $1,000 for married couples. At this forecast, the governor raised his proposal to $1,000 individual, $2,000 married couple. This will, of course, have to be agreed to by the legislature. However, from your point of view, are rebates, because of the one-time nature of the expense, a good idea, or could it contribute further to inflation?
They're a good idea for a bunch of reasons. Part of it is just getting money into people's pockets. It is a challenge for a lot of Minnesota families just to pay for food. We all know that that's expensive. That gas sometimes has been expensive. It's coming back down, but still, day-to-day expenses, it's a relief. That makes people more relaxed, helps people move into winter feeling a little bit more secure. That's an important thing to do. From a budgetary standpoint, the other thing is one-time spending, as you allude, is near and dear to our hearts, because we know that some of these balances, in fact, most of the $18 billion, doesn't keep on happening. It's a one-time amount. 12 of the $18 billion is just one time. Once we spend it, it's gone. So whether it is checks, whether it is matching funds for federal activities, whether it is other things that are more one-time in nature, it'll make our budget more sustainable and simpler going forward. So I think there's a lot of different ways of getting at it, and that's certainly a good one that the governor's put on the table, and I would expect we'll see again.
A mild recession is forecast from basically now into next year. At what level does an economic recession cause you to worry? Is a mild recession worrisome to you, or can the state handle it? What would be the impact to the state's budget if the recession were to be deeper than is projected?
Yeah, another great question, because in some ways, my job, a lot of our jobs is to worry, to look at the risks, to manage those risks, and assess what's the path forward. For the last couple of years, really from the time I came in about 2.5 years ago, the risks were almost unimaginable. This is the first time that I'd say, well, at least the risks are imaginable. You know, we're starting to get back to a place where the economy is behaving and dealing with risks and things that we have some experience with. Even things like the Ukraine invasion is something that we have a little bit of track record. Even COVID and how to deal with that, we have a little bit of track record. Inflation, we have a little bit of track record. So for the first time in a while, you know, yeah, I'm worried. Of course a recession could be worse. But we're starting to deal with things that the governor and the legislative leaders and the public are at least somewhat more familiar and probably have a little bit more boundary in terms of the risks and the impacts on any given household.
Just one more quick question before we go. Because of the high rate of inflation right now, should policymakers consider raising the amount of money in the rainy day fund simply because inflation would make government costs more in the future?
Certainly that's an option. It probably isn't high on my list of options right now because Minnesota already has pushed up its budget reserve thanks to cooperation between the governor and the legislative leaders so that we're reasonably well reserved. It's a long way away from where I was a decade ago, where literally the budget reserve was pretty close to zero. So we have done a great job of investing in that and pushing forward and paying off those one-time bills. I think it'll be on the list. But I think there's a lot of other great things that we can do with the one-time money.
Commissioner Jim Schowalter, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
The person responsible for analyzing the economic data that goes into a state budget forecast is the State Economist. Dr. Laura Kalambokidis has held the post since 2013, and she joins me now to talk about the latest budget and economic forecast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Minnesota's projected budget surplus, now at $17.6 billion, has continued to grow since the last forecast in February. To begin, was there anything that you found surprising about this forecast?
I think the biggest surprise that I've dealt with in the last couple of years is the persistent growth in tax receipts. And that with each forecast, we are seeing receipts come in ahead of our prior forecast. So we raised the forecast, and then receipts continue to come in ahead of our prior forecast. And that was, starting out this forecast, that was probably the biggest surprise, that the starting point was higher than I expected.
The big story everyone is talking about is the surplus, but perhaps the more important story is the long-term health of the economy. Mm-hmm. The forecast indicates that we are essentially entering a mild recession right now, one that will continue for much of next year. What can Minnesotans expect from a mild recession?
Yeah, so the U.S. macro forecasters that we use are saying that there will be a mild U.S. recession, which means slower GDP growth. It's an investment-driven recession, meaning that slower GDP growth is largely the result of slower investment, so business investment and especially investment in residential housing, and that it will push the U.S. unemployment rate up. So what we can expect is slower growth for the state And we should expect Minnesota's unemployment rate to get pushed up as well. But because Minnesota has a very low unemployment rate right now and still has high demand for workers, what we expect is that people will lose, there will be some job loss, but that it will create more churn in the labor market, that people will be able to get picked up by other employers.
So perhaps the unemployment rate in Minnesota will remain on the lower side.
Minnesota's unemployment rate is almost always quite a bit below the U.S. rate. So and it's historically low right now. So there's some running room for this our unemployment rate to come up a bit before it becomes alarming. And yes, I do expect it to stay below the U.S. rate.
Well, and to say one more thing then about the labor market, because the report did note that Minnesota's labor market is one of the tightest in the nation. We have an aging workforce, and we also don't have lots of new workers coming in. How can the economy long-term continue to grow when there is that labor shortage?
That is a significant limitation, that labor supply is limiting employers' ability to add jobs. What can we do? Their demographics change is what it is, and we've been expecting it for a long time. So I think that employers should be and are looking to the pockets of unemployment that we do still have. They're thinking about flexibility. The pandemic, for all the difficult things that it caused, it did help employers sort of jump ahead in terms of being flexible with regard to the workforce. I think those kinds of things can help. International immigration is largely determined by the federal government. And so if the federal government opens immigration and a lot of those international immigrants come to Minnesota, that will be helpful too.
Minnesota's current crisis with a lack of affordable housing occurred in part because of the recession in 2008, when market conditions caused a significant slowdown in building. What impact will another, although perhaps smaller, recession have on the housing industry in Minnesota as we're still trying to crawl out from underneath the last, recession where housing was behind?
So trying to catch up some of that underbuilt housing. Two things are going on here. One is this U.S. recession that's is expected to be driven partly by lower investment in residential structures, in homes. And so that's problematic if that happens here when we need more structures. On the other hand, this is sort of a buffer for Minnesota, is that our housing market has not been affected as much by housing market slowdowns in other parts of the country. And so our home prices remain higher they haven't fallen as much as in some other parts of the country. The construction has continued, even as it's switched from single family dwellings to multifamily. So we might not see as much of an impact here. But that also means, so it's a multifaceted problem that if you own a home, then you're glad that home prices haven't come down as much. But it does hit, along with higher mortgage rates, it does hit affordability. And so affordability has been one of the strengths of the Twin Cities area relative to, for instance, the large coastal cities. And if affordability, if the Twin Cities become less affordable and Minnesota at large becomes less affordable, that is a problem for our growth. So affordable housing will continue to be the kind of investment that we can make that will help expand our workforce and help the economy thrive.
According to IHS, the macroeconomic consultants that the state uses, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index inflation, so it topped like 8.1% this year. It's expected to fall to 4.3 next year, then 2.7 the following year. After that, an average of 2.2 for 2025 to 2027. How tenuous is a forecast with such an optimistic inflation prediction? How did they know that inflation, which is kind of all over the map right now, will calm down later?
Yeah, there are so many things that are affecting inflation right now. A lot of it is supply side driven, and a lot of those supply constraints have been normalizing this year. So that's one of the reasons they were thinking that it would come down. But the main reason is that since our last forecast, and inflation spiked, the Fed has acted 6 times to raise interest rates with the goal of slowing the economy and reducing demand so that those prices do come in. And so IHS has in their forecast the expectation that the economy is going to really slow all the way to the point of a recession. And with that kind of slow growth in the forecast, they can expect prices to come down.
There is an expectation in the forecast that consumer spending will continue to grow. 2.7% this year, under 1% next year, just over 1% the following year. Consumer spending is responsible for growth in the economy. With inflation, then, does that spending amount to more purchasing power? Or is it just saying that goods and services will cost more? So in other words, are Minnesotans going to get more bang for their buck in the future?
So those specific statistics are about real or inflation-adjusted consumer spending. So they do say that inflation-adjusted consumer spending is expected to grow through this slow period or through this mild recession. And that's consistent with the idea that this is actually not a consumer-driven recession, it's an investment-driven recession. So consumer spending is the largest part of GDP growth, investment is the second largest part. And so consumers are going to, in this story, in this scenario, will continue to spend and have purchasing power while investment gets pulled back.
So this is just a strange forecast, I think, because we have this big surplus on the one hand, and we also have this sort of, I don't know, topsy-turvy, and yet there's a prediction that it will steady in the long term. In your view, is this an optimistic forecast, or is it accurate? Like, what's your whole take on this thing?
Yeah, so the hardest thing to do in forecasting is to forecast an inflection point or a point where things turn, either up or down. And we have seen in the last few years all sorts of inflection points, up and down. And so it makes sense that there's a larger band of confidence, larger error rate around these kinds of forecasts now, because we're not just forecasting that things are going to continue being the same. We're forecasting that things are going to change. So there's a lot of risk involved here.
Dr. Laura Kalambokidis, State Economist, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We close this week's program with the latest from our new series on the governors of Minnesota. John Sargent Pillsbury, the 8th governor of Minnesota, he came to the state in 1855 in his late 20s and immediately began pursuing interests in lumber, real estate, and hardware, eventually co-founding what became the largest flour milling operation in the world. Was he the first entrepreneur to become governor, or maybe just the most successful?
He was not the first entrepreneur. You can look at William Marshall, was into all kinds of different businesses. He was a livestock raiser, editor of a newspaper, ran a bank. But for success, yeah, it's hard to rival Pillsbury's success as that businessman. And that's one of the things you have to understand about him. He had a strong resolve to always succeed and do the best thing possible. So when he started his hardware business, they lost everything in a fire. It was uninsured, so they lost about $40,000, and they were in debt. And he paid that off, year by year, and eventually was able to, make investments in other business ventures, and of course being successful as part of the Pillsbury milling company.
I read that it was not just his business acumen that prompted Minnesotans to want him to seek public office, but also his honesty. What did he do to serve the public good before he became governor?
Yeah, shortly after he moved to St. Anthony in 1855, he was elected to their city council in 1858. So he served in that public, smaller, of course, city government, but then he was well received and well liked, and became a state senator. And so he served for about a decade as that state senator in the 1860s up to the early 1870s, and then that vaulted him to prominence as a Republican politician, and he eventually was elected governor.
Governor Pillsbury ended up serving 3 terms as governor of this state, and that was the longest at that point in Minnesota history. Was he popular?
Oh, very much so. And obviously if you can win 3 elections, and you have to remember those were 2-year terms. And so that was one thing that he was able to rest his laurels on was all the successes he had as the governor. And there were a lot of trials and things that were happening in those 6 years that he was a part of and had some decision-making role in all of that.
And so what were some of his accomplishments then as governor?
Well, one thing, and this is more constitutional, is they changed the whole biennium session. So it used to be a one-year session, and they changed that under his guidance to a two-year biennium session. They elevated the years of service for a senator from 2 years to 4 years, and also House members were 1 year, was changed from 1 year to 2 years. So that all took place during his 6 years as governor. And you also have all kinds of events taking place in the state. You have the grasshopper plagues, and so he had some finances, of course, with the milling company, and so he took it upon himself to not only give people things or donate things as part of his public service role, but he got other people to say, we got to help these farmers in the southern part of the state because they're destitute. And so he's one of those guys that was so well liked that they saw not only his political acumen but also his charity and his idea of helping the people of the state prosper were all important parts of his success.
Governor Pillsbury was known as the father of the university, and yet he himself only achieved an elementary level education. What did he do for the university?
Well, he was part of the Board of Regents as well. And what was happening is, and this is in the 1860s, there was not a lot of financial income coming in. They were defaulting. There was a real serious threat of the university shutting down. And so once again, he took the initiative to disband the existing Board of Regents, created a commission to help resolve the debts. And basically he was in charge of that for the 3 years until they righted the ship, got the University of Minnesota back on its feet, and then of course has prospered ever since. So what's really interesting coincidence too for this building and the statue of John Pillsbury on the U of M is that was done by the same artist who did the quadriga. That was Daniel Chester French. So they put a statue of John Pillsbury with the title Father of the University in 1900, one year before he passed away.
With his immense wealth, he was known as a generous benefactor and philanthropist, sometimes even anonymously. What were some of the causes that he contributed to?
Yeah, he was involved with civic engagement and charitable funds, but he also, as governor, the St. Peter State Hospital burned to the ground. The session wasn't meeting that year, so he, out of his own private money, donated that money, was reimbursed by the state, but they were able to find housing for those people in that hospital. And during the grasshopper plagues, he was down there trying to get support for those impoverished farmers who pretty much lost everything. And there's one story of where he was visiting and kind of incognito visiting some of these farms, and there's a farmer who didn't have a coat, and he took his overcoat off and gave it to him. And so after that, they were bringing in carloads of train cars of foods and supplies for these families down in western and southern Minnesota.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.